We are talking about all you need to know about macros, macronutrients. So you all have been there where you all know, I'm assuming, the if it fits your macros diet, where you can pretty much eat anything you want as long as you hit your 3 macronutrient numbers, those being protein, carbs, and fat. So you can have the diet of a 9-year-old at a birthday party, eating cake, crisps, ice cream, jelly, whatever it is that you want, as long as you're hitting your protein, your carbs, and your fat number, and you're staying, therefore, within your calorie requirement. So that's the idea of that particular diet. But is that actually practical in the real world? There's obviously a bunch of people that have huge successes with that particular diet, and there's a bunch of people that do, have healthy lifestyles, lose a lot of weight, get absolutely freaking shredded, and look great. Cool. There's people that do that. But there's a lot of people out there that struggle with the complexity that comes with trying to look at 3 different numbers, the complexity that comes with trying to make sure that your diet is really focused in on hitting a protein number, a carbohydrate number, and a fat number each and every day. That can be quite a difficult thing to do for the normal person. So what we're talking about here is, are macronutrients actually that important? Do you actually need to focus on them? Do you actually need to care about them? And do they matter as much as some people think they do for the average person who's potentially just trying to lose a little bit of weight, trying to drop a bit of body fat and build a bit of muscle, look good, feel good, all those sorts of things? Is it really that important to focus in on macronutrients? That's what we're going to be covering. Now, before I launch into this, I'm going to say that if you want to find out more information about nutrition and you want a bunch of free information from me, then I've put a link in the notes to the Lean Life Kickstarter Pack, where you get a 4-week free training program, a guide on how to calculate your calories, and then a bunch of other stuff as well for free. So if you want that, go grab it. But for now, we're going to launch straight into all you need to know about macros. Now, I'm going to assume you have come to this episode, this little talk, not knowing too much about the whole nutrition process. Apologies if this is covering old ground for you, but I like to make sure everybody's on the same page when we start. So when we talk about macronutrients, we are specifically talking about protein, carbs, fat, and alcohol. Most people don't consider alcohol to be a macronutrient, but it absolutely 100% is. Now, macronutrients are named as such because they are nutrients which we either need or get from our diet in big quantities. That's opposed to a micronutrient, which you get in much smaller quantities. So think vitamins and minerals and things like that being your micronutrients, macronutrients being your protein, carbs, fat, whatever. Now, when you're looking at protein, you're getting 4 calories per gram of protein, and the same for carbohydrate. You're getting 9 calories per gram fat and 7 calories per gram on alcohol. So of all of those macronutrients, fat is the most calorific macronutrient per gram that you can have. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just worth knowing. So the difficulty comes when you go and look for an online calculator to calculate your macros. There's a bunch of them out there. There's people that have made millions doing macronutrient calculators. Now, the key thing here is that you're basically going to tap in a bunch of numbers to say, I don't know, I'm a 3-foot midget who's 10 stone 5, who is whatever, training this much, and I want to lose some weight. Cool. It's then going to spout at you 3 different numbers. Those 3 different numbers are going to be a protein target, a carbohydrate target, and a fat target to hit, making you feel like if I hit these numbers, then that's all I need to do. Now, obviously, if you do hit those numbers and the calculations have been correct, you will be in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight, you will lose fat. That's how you get to, the physique that you want to achieve. That's absolutely 100% possible. The difficulty comes in the sense that normal people don't really manage their nutrition down to that minute level. There's not many people out there that plan to try and hit protein, carbs, and fat bang on to the gram every day. It's just not real world situations. Again, there's people out there that say, yeah, I do it. It's fine. But okay, for the vast majority of people who busy, stressful lives, maybe have children, things like that, trying to be so precise about macronutrient intake is very, very complex. It's very difficult. It's mind-numbing, and actually is quite demotivating for a lot of people. And it can lead to a lot of worry and needless concern when you don't hit those numbers perfectly. People think, oh no, I'm slightly, oh, my fat's too high, my carbs are too high, and protein's too low, and oh, this is a bad day. When actually, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Unless you are like taking this whole fitness thing to the nth degree. You're the dude that's stepping on stage in your purple pants with your fake tan splashed all over yourself. Not that that's a bad thing either before the haters come. Or you're stepping on stage as a bikini competitor and all these different sorts of things. When you start to get down to that minute level where getting absolutely freaking shredded matters, then you just don't need to worry about macronutrients to that degree. Now, I'm not saying that they're not important. I'm not saying that you don't have to focus on them to some degree. I'm just saying that you don't really have to worry about hitting 3 numbers all the freaking time, all the goddamn day to the exact gram. So everything really starts with your energy balance, with calories. And that's, a given. That is, unless you're an absolute freaking moron who doesn't think that energy balance drives weight loss and weight gain, then we're on the same page. But let's assume for a second that's out of the way. We've got calories sorted, whether it's 1,500 calories, 2,000 calories, 2,500 calories, whatever calories you're aiming for, let's assume that they're in place. You know what your number is. You know it's going to be a deficit. Where do you go from there? Well, the next thing is you're going to look at protein. Protein being probably the most important macronutrient for you to focus on for the goal of losing fat and for building muscle, but for different reasons. For fat loss, really, the high protein is going to help you with a posh term called satiety. Now, satiety basically just means feeling full. So if you imagine you're sat at your office chair, it's 3 p.m., you had lunch at 12, you're not leaving work for another couple of hours, and you won't have dinner for another, say, 3 or 4 hours. So you're in this dead spot where you're feeling hungry, and it's kind of at that stage where, the guy sitting to your left is drumming his feet, tapping his fingers on the table, basically just annoying the fuck out of you. And you're having those visions of stabbing him in the neck with a pen because he's fucking annoying you, because you're a little bit hangry. And that leads you to some crazy thoughts. Now, having a bit of protein is going to help you avoid going to prison. It's going to help you avoid stabbing a guy in the neck. And okay, you might lose a little bit more weight on a prison diet, but that's, I'm going to guess, not your preferred strategy. So let's assume that we have more protein in our diet. You help feel fuller for longer. Therefore, your cravings, your hunger is much less throughout the day. That's a great thing. Also, you're going to help with muscle retention. So if you've built any muscle in the past and you want to keep hold of it, high protein diet is going to help you do that. Also, if you're new, you can build muscle in deficit pretty easily. So definitely labor on protein being one of your goals. And also, if you're more advanced as well, or you're just looking to build muscle and you're in a calorie surplus, again, focus on your protein, because the amount of protein servings you have throughout the day do matter in terms of building muscle. So 4 to 6 protein servings per day is ideal. 2 to 3 of those being kind of around the 0.3 to 0.5 grams per kilo. One being around 0.2 to 0.3 grams per kilo, and another being around 0.5 to 0.6 grams per kilo before you go to bed. That's kind of like the optimum way to set up your protein intake. And you can listen to a podcast on that I've done before. Now, I would say on top of that, if your goal is to lose body fat, then actually your protein intake still isn't as important and as crucial as people may make out. Yes, you want to keep it high for all the reasons that I've mentioned, but if you don't hit that protein goal for whatever reason in a day, maybe you're 10, 15, 20, 25 grams off, it just doesn't make a huge amount of difference day to day. So don't worry too much if you don't hit that protein goal. Give yourself a broad range to work within, and then just kind of be normal about it. That's kind of what I would say. Then let's go on to talk about fat. So we've assumed that the protein is our most important macronutrient, and now we're talking about fat. Now, you need fat in your diet. You can't just go completely zero fat in your diet. I'm not saying you have to go keto, but you definitely want to make sure that you have some fat in your diet, because you will die if you don't. Fat is useful, and Fat is essential for health, for hormone function, for all these different sorts of things to make you feel good and to make your body run effectively. Now, how low can you go in the sort of a limbo sort of thing? You could probably go very low on fat and still survive, but I think that you want to do more than survive. And plus, when you're talking about fat as well, it's difficult to separate that out from the foods that you have. So a logical thing that I like to prescribe to clients and talk to clients about is aim for 20 to 25% of your total calorie intake to come from fat as a minimum. If you want more, cool, go fill your boots, go for more. But I would kind of encourage people to keep that minimum amount of fat in their diet for proper hormone function, for health function, immune function, all those different sorts of things. So definitely make sure that you don't skimp on fat and don't fear fat. Fat is not what makes people fat. Calories are what makes people fat. Remember that. Then we're going to talk about carb and fat ratios. Now, this is a real kind of like heated hot topic, depending on what camp you sit in. So the carb and fat ratio is, okay, once I've got my calories set, once I've got my protein set, what's the ratio of carbs to fat? Now, the real answer is it just doesn't fucking matter for fat loss. Just doesn't fucking matter for fat loss. If you want to go keto, great. Keto works. I'm not going to sit here and say keto doesn't work. It doesn't help people lose weight and lose fat. It absolutely does. If it works for you, you enjoy that way of eating, fill your fat-filled boots and go for it, because keto can work. But it doesn't work for everybody. A lot of people like bread, they like pasta, they like rice, they like carbohydrate-filled foods. And if you're that type of person, you can absolutely lose weight, lose body fat, and be super, super healthy by eating carbohydrates and having quite a high carbohydrate intake within your diet. The things that you hear about spiking insulin, stopping fat loss is just nonsense. It just does not happen like that. As long as you're in a calorie deficit, the carb and fat ratio does not matter. Now, you can flex that carb and fat ratio day to day, week to week, month to month, whatever you want to be. If you want to stay at a ketogenic diet forever, cool, go for it. If you want to have some high fat foods one day and some high carbohydrates another day, cool, do that. If you want a carb cycle, do that. Again, it just doesn't matter when it comes to fat loss. When you've got the calories on point, when you've got the protein high, the rest just matters very, very little. Now, that's what I'm trying to sort of bring you around to a way of thinking, is that it's not about these three numbers that you're trying to hit. Trying to hit protein, carbs, and fat is making it too complicated. It's making you tie yourself up in knots about the nutrition decisions that you're making. And actually, you just don't need to go to that level of detail for the goal that you have. All that you need to do is say, this is my calorie number. Again, whether that's 1,500, 1,600, 1,800, 2,000, 2,500, it just doesn't matter. Then you say, okay, got my calorie number, got my protein number, or even your protein range, not a specific number. And then you're going to say, well, my food choices, as long as they stay within that calorie number, they can be whatever you want. So if you're the type of person who wants nuts, seeds, avocado, high fat foods, then cool. Your carb and fat ratio will tend towards fat, but your calories will still be on track. If you're the type of person that loves bread, pasta, and all that sort of stuff, you might have a higher carbohydrate intake. That's cool too. It's just that carb and fat ratio really, really doesn't matter as much as people make out. Now, one question that I guarantee every client I've probably ever had has asked this question at one point or another. And that is, if they have a calorie goal and a protein goal, but they're under their calorie target and they're under their protein target, do they eat more protein, potentially exceeding their calorie target, just so they can hit their protein number? So whether that's you've maxed out your calories, but you're still under on protein, do you overeat on protein and then potentially overeat on calories to hit that protein goal? The answer is always no. If you're in a calorie deficit and your goal is to lose weight and lose fat, you still have to come back to that principle of energy balance being the foundation of everything. So your first and foremost goal is to hit your calorie number. That's the first goal. Other stuff is clearly important. I'm not saying it's not important, but that's the first thing to get in place, is that calorie target. Once you've got that in place, everything else should fit around it. So calorie target in place, then we focus on protein. If we don't hit protein target for that day, then we don't sacrifice hitting our calorie target to hit that protein target. That would just not be the right thing to do. So absolutely not. Do not sacrifice hitting your calorie target to try and hit your protein target. Absolutely do not do that. Then one of the other questions that kind of pops up a lot is alcohol. So everybody likes a little bit of a drink. Everyone likes a little bit of a tasty wine in the evening. Maybe you're coming back from work. It's been stressful. You've been kind of, working your fingers to the bone, and you just think, I'm just going to sit back, pop open a nice glass of wine and just sit back and watch Netflix. That's cool. But is that alcohol affecting your fat loss? A lot of people will say that, alcohol is a toxin. Therefore, the body prioritizes getting rid of that toxin and therefore shuts down the fat loss process. A little bit like the insulin debate, where as soon as you have some carbohydrate and it spikes insulin, then the body tries to deal with that and effectively shuts down the fat loss process while it does that process, which is perfectly fine, perfectly logical. But if you're in a calorie deficit, it just doesn't matter, because over the course of that day, everything just evens itself out. And it's the same really with alcohol. Yes, in that finite period where you're having alcohol, your process of fat loss will stop while your body prioritizes that. But over the course of the day, if you still remain in a calorie deficit, you will still burn the same amount of fat. Now, the issue comes in the sense that, there's no nutrient content with alcohol, so you're not getting any sort of like side benefit from that. And also, it's going to be very, very easy to exceed your calorie target if you're having a lot of alcohol. So that's where, again, it comes back to energy balance. And if you haven't got the energy balance bit in place, then you will potentially increase weight, especially if you're having alcohol, which is easy to overconsume in terms of calories, unless you're having you're like a gin and slimline tonic, that's quite low on calorie. But if you're having 10 beers is like 2,000 calories. So that's like a day's worth of eating for a lot of people. So again, if you can do that and manage energy balance and not feel shit, then all the power to you. But I'm not sure that many people can do that. So when it comes down to knowing all you need to know about macros, actually it's very little. You don't need to know a super amount about macros. You don't have to worry about it that much. I would generally say steer clear, unless you are like taking this to another level of complexity and another level of advanced nutrition. Don't worry about macro splits. 40-40-20 doesn't mean jack shit. Macro splits don't mean jack shit. Just work on what works for you. Get that calorie number in place, focus then on protein, and then get a minimum amount of fat, but do what you want with kind of the rest. And just really take the pressure off yourself, make the process of losing weight, losing body fat, an easiest thing to do possible. You'll find that it's much easier to fit in the foods you love, much easier to eat without being anxious and being neurotic about the whole process if you actually just take the pressure off yourself by not focusing on specifically on trying to hit 3 macro numbers all the time, because that's a surefire way that you're going to end up eating the dry chicken like a nun's freaking fanny. You're going to be eating broccoli as limp as a granddad's dong, and rice that's freaking like the used cat litter tray. So you don't want that. You want to have a much more relaxed way of doing it. And that's just focus on calories, focus on protein, and leave the rest as it may be. So I hope you enjoyed this little episode, this little talk through all you need to know about macros. If you did, you can come let me know on Instagram. That's where I hang out. So that's at iron_paradise_fitness. But for now, I'll say keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next one.